You, as the presenters, are taking on a fictional business identity, and you're telling us, the judges, who we are supposed to be. So you can do that in your intro. Please make sure everybody knows who you are and who we are before you actually start. I'll keep time. You have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem you've identified, and to recommend solutions that pass muster on all three counts: legal, financial, and ethical. During this time, we will not interrupt you, but when you're finished, we'll ask you questions in our roles that you've assigned to us for 10 or 15 minutes, however long that goes. When that's done, well, during that time, we'll stay in our role. After the Q&A, we can step outside those roles. We'll tell you a little bit about ourselves as the judges, so you'll know who we were. And then we'll give you some feedback. So team, if you are ready, I will start the timer when you tell me to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Should we get started?
Yes, I'm going to start the timer.
So good afternoon, everyone. We are Tiichám partners. We are going to talk about harnessing Indigenous knowledge into climate defense. Next slide, please. So we are a team of 5 people. We have Brittany Blocker, who is specializing in maritime sustainability initiatives. Then we have Janvi Upadhyay, continuous improvement specialist with focus on sustainability. Jennifer D'Souza, that's me, product management with focus in sustainability initiatives. Then you have Sarah Perkins, finance professional with MBA specialized in ESG leadership. And then you have Shruti Pradhan, product strategy specialist with focus in ESG initiatives. So we'll get started now. Over to Sarah.
And also part of the introduction, judges, you are Woodwell Climate Research Center. You're the fund managers who invest in climate solutions. So to begin, let me go. This is a summary of the topics we're presenting today. The problem at hand is that the planet Earth faces climate destabilization and biodiversity collapse, which has been accelerating since the industrial age. We find that the private and public sectors are rushing to find solutions, but Indigenous voices are frequently overlooked despite research identifying their ancestral knowledge and relationship with nature as a vital conservation asset. When considering these climate issues, it's essential to recognize their financial impact. Extreme weather events disrupt the economy and cause expensive damage to critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, biodiversity loss impacts the production of goods that rely on natural processes, especially food systems. In addition, the solution we propose today, there is also an important legal issue related to the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I had the opportunity to attend an interview with Chief Borrell from the Virgin Islands, and he has been highly involved with the UN on matters of Indigenous rights and climate solutions. He told us that this declaration enabled Indigenous peoples to enter into the spaces on climate change and biodiversity. However, some countries like New Zealand are considering withdrawing due to continued abuses against Indigenous peoples in regions throughout the world. One example, as you can see in this picture here, is in Nepal, where Indigenous people have been forcibly and violently evicted from their ancestral lands by the government, who viewed this as a conservation action, which you'll see today actually contradicts a lot of our research. So in the words of Chief Borrell, rolling back on Indigenous rights will have an impact on the environment worldwide. This also brings up the ethical considerations of climate destabilization in relation to Indigenous peoples. The climate crisis disproportionately impacts marginalized groups who lack resources and mobility to escape dangerous regions. Additionally, in the words of Joseph Lee, who's a journalist, he says, Indigenous peoples have long argued that they have done little to contribute to climate change, but that they are the most affected and are expected to make steep sacrifices to fix it, such as the example we gave from Nepal. So the solution that we'll be proposing to you is about empowering Indigenous people to participate in these solutions for climate change. Our company will partner with them in order to establish coastal ecosystems using eco-friendly and ancient nature-based solutions. Jennifer will now go into some detail about the problems that we mentioned.
Thank you, Sarah. Now let's move on to negative effects caused due to climate destabilization. The climate changes observed over the 20th century include increases in global air and ocean temperature, rising global sea levels, reduction of snow and ice cover, and changes in atmospheric and ocean circulation, as well as regional weather patterns, which influence seasonal rainfall condition. Climate is changing, and it's projected to change even more unless the amount of greenhouse heat trapping gases emitted globally reduces. So what's the evidence for this? How do we know that? Different types of environmental evidence are used to understand what the Earth's past climate was like and why. Records of the historical climate conditions are preserved in tree rings, locked in the skeletons of tropical coral reefs, sealed in glaciers and ice caps, and buried in laminated sediments from lakes and the ocean. Now, how do they affect, right? Eroding human capital. Climate shocks reinforce pre-existing poverty traps, threaten to increase poverty levels, affect a child's well-being, and impacts productivity in adulthood. Extreme heat, for instance, is directly linked to increased hospitalization during pregnancy, chronic and acute malnutrition in early childhood. A global loss of 470 billion work hours among adults was reported in 2021, as well as over 300,000 deaths of people over 65 was reported in 2019. Warmer climate could lead to at least 21 million additional deaths by 2050 from 5 health risks like extreme heat, stunting, diarrhea, malaria, and dengue. Now, covering the next effect, deforestation. Deforestation and degradation cause around 10% of global warming. Forests are crucial for sustainability development and for sustainable development, covering almost 1/3 of the Earth's land surface and offering habitat to over 80% of all terrestrial species and are key to preserving biodiversity. Forests also play a key role in mitigation of climate change, removing an estimated 16 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere annually. This equals to about half of the annual carbon dioxide released from burning fossil fuels. Now, carbon dioxide emission caused by loss of trees, for instance, due to logging or wildfires, averaged 8.1 billion tons annually over the past 20 years, which is roughly half the carbon dioxide that is removed from the atmosphere by forest. And the last issue, economic issues. There is a large uncertainty and disagreement on the economic cost of climate change. One of the main tools to assess the economic cost of climate change is integrated assessment model. They seek to estimate the potential economic loss due to climate change. For instance, in one of the Nordis project, it is projected by 2000 the damages will be 2.1% of global income at a 3 degrees Celsius warming and 85% of income at a 6 degrees Celsius warming. Another example that we can share that has caused increased mortality primarily due to heat amounted to at least $147 million within the Caribbean region, especially Caesar Department bearing the greatest economic burden. That's all from me. Now over to Sarah. Not Sarah, Brittany, sorry.
Thank you, Jennifer. So as we confront the harsh realities of climate destabilization that Jennifer outlined, we cannot ignore the profound toll of biodiversity loss, which is defined as the rapid and severe loss of the variety of life, inclusive of all species worldwide, which disrupts ecological balance and function. Biodiversity loss has wide-reaching and pervasive effects, but I will focus on 3 key areas today. First, biodiversity loss results in fewer plants, animals, and microorganisms, crucial for pollinating crops, purifying water, and maintaining soil fertility. Further, plants and animals can become increasingly vulnerable to pests and disease as biodiversity is weakened. So as we witness these declines in key species, the capacity of our ecosystems to support agricultural productivity diminishes, which poses significant challenges to food production and agricultural yields, which is especially concerning in a time of growing global population and increasing global food demand. Second, People often take for granted how much we depend on biodiversity for human health. Clearly, there's a link between the nutritional value and variety of the food we consume and our health, but there are other important, maybe less obvious factors to consider. The World Health Organization estimates that nearly 60% of the world's population, which is a couple billion people, use natural or traditional medicines, and even synthetic medicines often rely on plants, animals, and microbes in the research stage. So as species and the number of species diminish globally, this could reduce direct treatment options and opportunities to find viable drug solutions to health concerns. And then finally, the loss of biodiversity renders our ecosystems fragile. Studies have found that species loss at an intermediate and higher levels can impact ecosystems' productivity and decomposition processes, which can have a comparable magnitude of effects as other global environmental changes do, which Jennifer outlined on our last slide. So this can create a really negative downward spiral, accelerating climate change's impacts and further losing biodiversity and vice versa. So as Jennifer and I have painted a pretty grim picture of the monumental challenges we face, there is still plenty we can do as a business community to turn this around. And we will focus now on nature-based solutions in business. These nature-based solutions encompass a diverse array of strategies and practice that leverage the inherent power of nature to address environmental challenges and promote sustainability. These solutions range from direct interventions, such as planting trees and restoring wetlands, to more innovative approaches that integrate natural elements into the design of industrial components. So this range represents a holistic approach to problem solving that recognizes the interconnectedness of ecological, social, and economic systems. So we'll start here on the left side, considering the humble shade tree. In Ghana, cocoa farmers are embracing the practice of cultivating taller shade trees on their farms, not only to provide respite from the sun, but also to nourish the soil, which boosts their cocoa yields. This is a very simple yet effective approach, demonstrating how harnessing natural resources can exchange agricultural productivity while promoting ecological resilience. And now we'll shift our attention to innovative companies like e-Concrete, which was specifically founded to fuse nature and technology together in infrastructure design. E-Concrete's products are designed to enable life on concrete by mimicking natural habitats, both through the chemical composition of the actual material and the shape of the material, which includes the grooves and layers you see in that first picture. These features provide habitat opportunity for marine life while also strengthening the maritime infrastructure against erosion and wave activity. Now, only after 12 years of e-Concrete being in operations, their technology is already deployed in marine industrial locations all around the world. So this is a prime example of how successful nature-based solutions can be in the business world. And I will now hand it off to my colleague to discuss further examples.
Thank you, Brittany. Now we delve deep into often overlooked but critical aspect of our planet's sustainability and environmental conservation efforts, the role of indigenous people. Covering about 36% of the world's remaining intact forest, indigenous lands are home to 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. These communities have shown unparalleled efficiency in maintaining and safeguarding biodiversity, often offering lessons in stewardship that the modern world is only beginning to appreciate. Indigenous territories are not just spaces on the map, they are intricate ecosystems that have been meticulously managed and preserved through centuries of traditional knowledge and practices. Studies, including one by the World Bank, emphasizes that forests on indigenous lands boost higher biodiversity and are better maintained compared to those of non-indigenous lands. This isn't a coincidence, but the result of deliberate, sustainable stewardship. As we face accelerating environmental degradation, the wisdom of indigenous people has become increasingly invaluable. The World Bank highlights that empowering indigenous communities to manage their territories leads to more sustained and cost effective biodiversity conservation. Yet, our development models have often sidelined this ancestral knowledge, contributing to the biodiversity crisis and climate change that we are grappling with today. The need for a marriage between modern science and indigenous wisdom has never been more critical. Indigenous practices such as the creation of Indian black soil in the Amazonian rainforest demonstrate sustainable methods to combat the carbon emissions that we are facing right now. This ancient technique, alongside countless others, provides a blueprint for developing new technologies to combat the climate change and restore ecological balance. Our journey forward requires us to integrate Indigenous people as central partners in biodiversity conservation and climate mitigation strategies. This involves establishing effective Indigenous advisory groups in global initiatives and recognizing the rights of Indigenous communities over their lands and resources. By doing this, we not only honor their knowledge and contributions, but also invest in the most promising pathways to sustainability. Now, we will provide a couple of examples on how this is being done globally. As you can see, India is a land of diverse climates and geography and has cultivated a rich heritage of water management techniques tailored to its own environmental challenges. In the arid regions of Rajasthan, ancient stepwells known as the Bauris stand as testament to the ingenuity of past generations, serving both as reservoirs and social hubs. Similarly, the Zabo farming practices in Nagaland exemplifies a seamless blend of agriculture and water conservation, leveraging the natural landscapes to nourish life in challenging terrains. The wisdom encapsulated in practices such as the Ahar pines of Bihar and the Johars of Rajasthan goes beyond mere water conservation. These techniques rejuvenate groundwater levels, mitigate soil erosion, and reduce flood crisis, contributing significantly to the battle of climate change every day. They embody a holistic approach to ecological balance, ensuring biodiversity and sustainability for future generations. Our journey does not only end with India. Across the globe, civilizations have devised unique solutions to harness and conserve water, from the ancient Qanat system of Iran, a marvel of engineering that transport water across the deserts, to the innovative fog harvesting techniques in the Sahara and the traditional albercas of Spain. These practices showcase the universal significance of sustainable water management. Revitalizing these ancient practices in the contemporary world is not merely an act of preservation, but it's a step towards our resilience to climate change. These time-tested methods support local ecosystem, replenish groundwater, and ensure water security while empowering communities to take the lead in sustainable development, fostering a culture of respect and responsibility towards our planet. Now, Janvi will give further more examples that we are doing in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you, Stuti. So here are some more examples of indigenous knowledge and nature-based solution. So globally, mangrove forests are found on the coastal part of the countries. So mangrove forests in eastern India were shown to protect villages and crops from flooding during cyclone with 260 kilometers per hour winds and a 9-meter storm surges. Mangrove forests are critical ecosystems that provide a wide range of ecological, economic, and social benefits. Mangrove forests act as natural barriers, protecting coastlines from erosion, storm surges, and tsunamis as India faces. Their dense root system stabilizes coastal sediments and reduces the impact of waves and currents, thereby mitigating the damage caused by storms and maintaining the integrity of coastlines. Mangrove forests are also found in Ecuador, and they cover 61% of Ecuador's coastline. Mangrove supports diverse ecosystem, providing habitats for numerous species of plants, animals, and microorganisms. Mangrove forests are highly efficient carbon sinks as well, storing large amount of carbon in their biomass and sediments. Protecting and restoring mangrove ecosystem can play a significant role in mitigating climate change by reducing atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. Mangrove forests provide resilience to climate change impacts by buffering coastal communities from extreme weather events like rising sea levels, and saltwater intrusion. Their ability to adapt to changing environment conditions such as fluctuating salinity levels and tidal fluctuations makes them valuable assets in climate adaptation strategies. So overall, the conservation and sustainable management of mangrove forests are essential for safeguarding biodiversity, supporting coastal livelihoods, mitigating climate change, and ensuring the long-term resilience of coastal ecosystem and communities. Move to next slide. Another example similar to mangrove forest is oyster reefs. So they act in a very similar way as mangrove forest. So oyster reefs are vital marine ecosystem with numerous ecological, economics, and societal benefits as well. As I mentioned, very similar to mangrove forest. Oyster reefs provide critical habitat for a diverse area of marine species, including fish, mollusks, and various invertebrates in marine life. These reefs create complex three-dimensional structures that offer shelter, food, and breeding ground for numerous organisms, contributing to marine biodiversity and supporting the health of the coastal ecosystem. Oysters are filter feeders, meaning they actively filter and purify water by removing particles, algae, and pollutants as they feed. A single oyster can filter a large volume of water each day, improving water clarity and quality in estuarine and coastal environments. Oyster reef plays a crucial role in maintaining water quality by removing excess nutrients and sediments, which helps support the health of adjacent ecosystem as well, including seagrass beds and coral reefs. Overall, the conservation and restoration of oyster reefs are essential for maintaining healthy coastal ecosystem, supporting sustainable fisheries, protecting shorelines, and preserving cultural heritage and traditional in coastal communities. Efforts to address threats such as habitat loss, pollution, overharvesting, and climate change are crucial for ensuring the long-term viability and resilience of oyster reef ecosystem. Now I will move forward with Sarah to sum it up.
Thank you. So the culmination of all of our research came to the solution that our company offers, which is nature-based blue carbon ecosystems in coastal regions. So with your seed funding today, it will enable us to initiate this step-by-step process to establish these ecosystems. Our first step is to work with coastal industries and governments in at-risk regions, where we can present to them the financial risk of doing nothing versus the cost of our projects. We also get blue carbon investors in order to fund our projects. After this, the next step, which is very important according to our research, is to leverage Indigenous knowledge. So we partner with Indigenous communities in the region, and then we also share findings of other natural solutions from other regions, such as the mangroves or the oyster reefs or eco-concrete. And then we work together with them to agree on an appropriate solution for the region. From there, of course, we need to test the solution. And then after confirming that these species can thrive in the region, we will implement the solution. And then the benefit after this is that as we learn from the shade trees in Ghana, it opens up the region to be able to enter the carbon market. So the solution that we implement will be able to be maintained by participating in the carbon market as a blue carbon solution. The income in this will be split between the various partners who help to establish the solution. So the reason that this is the best solution for these coastal regions is, first of all, the blue carbon industry is a blue ocean. There are so much investment in climate solutions, but only about 3% of them are directed towards nature-based solutions, and blue carbon projects only get a small amount of that. So there's really not a lot of work being done in this kind of technology, this natural technology, which has been around for thousands of years. Actually, one important detail is that mangroves alone hold 4 to 10 times the CO2 sequestration potential of tropical rainforests. So this is a great benefit for the environment and also opens up a new economic opportunity for the local regions and of course for us Tiichám partners. And then finally,
2-minute warning.
Okay, it's okay. This is the last statement. So finally, about the ethical and legal considerations that we mentioned in the beginning, because we partner upfront with the local governments and the Indigenous peoples, we're able to come to solutions that abide by all of the relevant legal and ethical issues. So with this, actually, we'll conclude the presentation. if you would like to, oh, sorry, one more thing. This is our target market where we'll start with your seed funding. We are thinking of these different regions and who are currently facing rising sea levels. So one by one, we can go there and find the ones who are interested to participate in our product. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the information. I'm a little leery and a little bit confused about a potential role for Indigenous people. They don't have 21st century manufacturing or technology. And that's one of the things that interests us most about them. So what do they bring to all of these issues about climate change?
I can answer that question. Even if we think about the mangroves, which we mentioned to you, these nature-based solutions have been proven to actually be more effective than industrial solutions. So for example, there was some research done in California where they used an industrial bank in order, and then tested it against mangroves related to the rising sea levels and the impact of wave surges. And actually it was better to do nothing than to build the industrial bank. But between the industrial option and doing nothing, the mangroves did the best. So even research has shown that a lot of these nature-based solutions are better than industrial solutions, especially if you consider that industrial solutions, sometimes we don't think about the unintended consequences. So nature-based solutions, if it's the technology is natural to the region, we already know that it can thrive in that environment. But when we add in human technology, we don't know what the after effects will be. Like, for example, depleting the ecosystems and things like this.
Yeah, and if I could add, I think we are particularly interested in engaging Indigenous communities specifically for that reason, that their expertise lies in centuries and centuries of well-honed, practiced, and developed nature-based solutions that we will hopefully connect with manufacturing expertise and other industrial solutions that other entities or communities have developed over the past 100 years or so. So we're hoping to be the connector between that two, to find those nature-based solutions that we can combine with manufacturing or more modern practices to propel us into the future.
Yeah. And also in our research related to Nepal, there was a study done about the perception of, the Indigenous youth about the ancestral practices. And actually because of, modern technology, a lot of the young adults are considering the ancestral practices as not as effective as they actually are scientifically proven to be. So for that reason, a lot of Indigenous knowledge is being lost. So one example is, as we brought up, the Indian black soil in Brazil, that's a natural solution to hold carbon, within the soil. But if that knowledge is not passed down because the modern world doesn't respect Indigenous knowledge, then it's lost. And then we don't have solutions that we could otherwise have had that are naturally occurring.
Liam, are you there? Liam? Oh, no, sorry. Wrong. Any other judges have any thoughts here?
Sure, this is Carlos. Go. Great job, everybody. I thought you did fantastic. I learned a lot.
Stay in your role. Stay in your role. Feedback after.
Good. Thank you. Good feedback. 2 questions is, what is unique about your organization that will be successful and with these solutions? I know you said that not a lot of people are doing this, but what makes you solution, unique about it, and your company unique? And then second is, how did you determine the solutions that you did present here? I know a lot of them were creative, but how did you go about highlighting those, please?
I can answer the one about what makes us unique if someone wants to tackle the other question. I think what makes us unique is that, partnering with the local people is at the forefront of our company identity. Even our company name is in the Yakima dialect, which means land or earth. So because we start by finding out like localized solutions. We don't go in with Western, industrial solutions and say, hey, this is definitely going to work for you in Bangladesh without knowing anything about their region, right? We start by asking the locals, like, what solutions work here? What's the environment here? And we, work to preserve the indigenous knowledge over time as we also share. We share our findings from India and Ecuador, which we can share together with the people in Nigeria. And so that was what makes us unique. A lot of groups are not leveraging indigenous knowledge this way. The people, at least like the interview that I had the opportunity to attend, it's like they're operating on their own and they're trying on their own to find solutions or get, attention from the government. So we want to be the ones who can get funding for them and resources to carry out the things that they already know can work for their region.
I see. Thank you.
And can you repeat the second question for someone else?
Sure. So you offer some solutions there. How did you why did you determine those particular solutions that you highlighted?
Yeah, I can take this one. So at first, we really dove into our problem statement. I think it's clear to everybody that climate change and biodiversity loss is the big issue of our world today. And through investigating that problem, we were also looking at examples of solutions, and it was apparent to us through our research that indigenous solutions are the most effective. And through this research, we also found that the areas that are most impacted by biodiversity loss and climate change are coastal regions. So that helped us hone our target customers and regions being on the coast. And then the plethora of indigenous knowledge surrounding coastal waterways, wetlands, that helped us really define our solution being rooted in indigenous knowledge and nature-based solutions, especially given how close nature and commerce are connected on coastal waterways and coastal regions all throughout the globe.
Thank you.
Also, one more thing is like the interview we did with Chief Borrell, one thing that he mentioned to us is the UN has this goal 30 by 30, which is that they want to have 30% of the Earth's surface under protected status by 2030. But the indigenous people already manage 25% of that. So there's such like a vital resource to reach that goal that the whole world has. So even just partnering with them, it gives us such a leg up on the worldwide goals.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm thinking as a fund manager here, just a couple of questions, because I've ethically and persuasively bought into your point here, but I have a couple of questions about even if there's a cost to this, what type of cost? I can see a local aspect and a maybe a global scaling of this process, and there's some efficiencies at the local levels. But from a financial standpoint, what does this look like? As you come asking us to invest in these projects, anything that you can shed light on in that regard would be helpful.
I did consider, if anyone else wants to answer, they can, but I did consider this as we were talking about the previous slide. The initial project cost that we are asking from you is, first of all, the time that we need to spend working together with the indigenous people. So there will be the cost of our services in order to fund that. And then the actual cost will depend on the solution. So if the solution is mangrove forest, then we need to, do an analysis on the cost of planting those. If the solution in that region is better to be like eco-concrete or oyster shells, then we need to also consider the cost of those. So in the seed funding, we need to think about the cost of services, travel, and time spent partnering with these people, as well as initially, putting in those different resources. However, we will also be asking for funding, of course, from the local governments and from the coastal industries who will also benefit from this. So our financial analysis can be more complete once we have the specific region that we will start with.
So what if one of the indigenous responses is everything would be fine if we get everybody that looks like the 8 of us off our native lands? just go away.
I think just based on, the interviews that we did, it seems unlikely for that to happen because the places that are our targets are already like large civilizations that it would not be reasonable for anybody to ask that. So for example, Shanghai is on the list. Shanghai is also surprisingly at risk of rising sea levels because of their like proximity to the ocean. It's not a reasonable ask, right? To remove so many skyscrapers and this kind of thing. So I think because it's a partnership between the indigenous peoples and not just like anybody, it's the leaders, right? The leaders who have, we believe from our experience, reasonable expectations of these kind of partnerships together with the government. We don't expect that to happen. And if it does, we would, have to talk through it with them and with the other representatives that we're working with.
Yeah, I completely agree with Sarah. The engagement with local indigenous communities is obviously critical to the scope of our work. So even if after explaining our position, the mission that we're trying to do in their communities, if that's the response, we will have to move on and find a different location or target area to collaborate with. But as we showed on the last slide, there's simply no shortage of places in the world that we can target to do this work. And I think from what I've seen from interviews that Sarah has mentioned, there really is a deep need and desire to be finding solutions, especially nature-based solutions. And from what we've seen, indigenous communities would be willing to participate.
To tie
Yes,
that
I
back
think-
to the financial, I have an add-on question here. Did you do any type of, I guess that's part of what you're asking for is the funds to do risk analysis for each situation? Am I correct in that scope of where you're at in the project here?
The funding that we're asking for is just to get us started. So yeah, it will be funding to do risk analysis, but we believe
Okay.
that once we get our solution implemented and we're able to even enter the solution into the blue carbon market, then we will have sustained finances.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Just adding on to what
What
Sarah
would you
and-
do? What would you do in Detroit, Michigan? Who would you even talk to?
We would have to research what kind of indigenous peoples are in that area. So like, for example, I grew up on the Wind River Indian Reservation. So it would be easier for me to say, oh, how am I gonna, propose a solution for my hometown because I know those people, right? So I think the first thing we would need to do is find out, which indigenous communities are still in the region. So we can, and find out what are the issues that they're facing related to this. But also our solutions are coastal. That's where our area of expertise is. And so I don't know that Detroit would be one of our target areas, but maybe like Tampa Bay or Miami would be like in the United States.
Well, it's on the coast of Lake Michigan.
Yeah, I think, one idea that I have for growth with our business is even if there is not a local community in one specific area like Detroit, maybe we can't find any indigenous communities within a 50-mile radius of Detroit to partner with, we can still tap into indigenous knowledge in other comparable environments. So maybe anywhere else on the Great Lakes, we've done projects, maybe in Milwaukee that could apply to the landscape of Detroit and Detroit's waterway. We can use that knowledge elsewhere. So it doesn't have to be, hyper local communities. We can be sharing knowledge across states, countries, continents. The mangroves example that we shared earlier are deployed all over the world. That is not unique to one specific country. So we can be kind of amplifying these nature-based solutions that are going to work anywhere in the world or in different parts of the world, however it is appropriate. And as we're doing these projects globally, we'll be developing this repository of indigenous knowledge and examples so that we can, have an arsenal to tap into when we do go to a new location, like maybe Detroit.
Judges, any more questions?
No, I just find this very interesting. I appreciate it. I'm familiar with the Nepali community along Lake Erie, so it's amazing how small the world can be and how the impact can be made. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
Okay, so we probably should tell you who we are. You can step out of your role, take a deep breath. The hard part is over. I'm Barney Rosenberg. I am a recovering lawyer. I started my working life as a white-collar criminal defense lawyer, and then spent the last 15 years as the global vice president for ethics and business conduct for a British company in, of all things, the aerospace business. And one little story about the company is that they started in aerospace before there was such a thing. In the year 1850, somebody invented an altimeter for hot air balloons. So the pilots of the balloons could know how high above the Earth's surface they were flying. Queen Victoria was so impressed that she gave them a royal charter. And today they make something on everything that flies, even the International Space Station. So the message there is I worked with a lot of people who are much smarter than I am. Jeremy? Tell us about
Yes,
you.
I am I have my own business consulting and have an engineering and finance background. I actually started there with what was Hughes, became Boeing Satellite Systems. So I'm familiar with the area. Just this is my second year doing this, and I just enjoyed it so much last year. I want to come back and learn about the new projects and the new people, and it's just a joy to participate in this process because I love the issues that we discuss.
And where did you go to school?
My undergrad was at Brigham Young University in Utah. My MBA program was there at Loyola, and this is my opportunity to kind of keep those ties. So it's good to be here.
Nice.
Thanks.
Which Loyola?
Marymount.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Tell us about you, Carlos.
Sure. I'm Carlos Crizello. Let's see. I have a tech background and business background. I was a partner at a venture capital company, so this is very typical for me. Companies presenting, we would do seed funding and incubate some of those companies as well that we funded. Worked at several consulting business tech consulting companies as well, you probably heard of. And then I had a pleasure of teaching an MBA program in my spare time for about 20 years. And part of you asked about school, so I went to UC Santa Barbara, Loyola Marymount University, and Claremont Graduate Drucker School. I think those are the three.
Yeah, I neglected to mention that I graduated from a small finishing school in central New Jersey. You may have heard of it. It's called Princeton University. And then after playing around for a couple of years, traveling the world, I went to law school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So you guys all fit right in wherever you went to school because we're not allowed to know. Good job. I'm sure you'll do well in the rest of the competition. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
Good job, everybody.
Thank you.